Joined us today. So just for their benefit, I would like to just mention a few things about Prabhuji. He's a senior disciple of His Holiness Mahavishnu Goswami Maharaj of Rajkot. He started his Krishna consciousness journey in the year 1983 in Singapore through Srimad Bhagavatam. And since then, he's been regularly studying and enlightening the whole world in the science of Krishna consciousness, specifically through the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam. He's also the zonal supervisor for all the preaching and devotional activities in Singapore. He is also the global GBC and general counsel for ISKCON worldwide. He obviously relishes association of devotees and is very happy to be here with us today. Actually, Prabhuji has not been keeping that well in the last few days, but still he's kept his word. And thank you for coming in and giving us your association, Prabhu. I request you to please start the class. All yours, Prabhu.
Thank you.
Krishna.
Thank you very much, Suhi Krishna Prabhu. Very nice to see you. And I may not be able to see everyone yet because most of you have your videos off, but I want to offer my respectful obeisances to everyone. Jai, good to see everyone. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Srila Dev. Some of you I've had the good fortune of meeting either online or personally a few years ago. And thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to come and have your association. I know it's about 7:48 p.m. in New Zealand. It's the afternoon in Singapore. But somehow, because of this technology, we are able to speak to each other. Today's topic is actually on Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his devotees, and in particular, in this case, it actually centers around the wonderful pastime of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and King Prataparudra. King Prataparudra is an amazing character and personality from the pages of Chaitanya Charitamrita. And there's so many things that we can learn from him, actually. So let us try to understand these beautiful pastimes of the Lord and his devotees. And from them, so many nice things we can get, actually. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandro, Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandro, Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandro, Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Jai Shri Gauranga Mahaprabhu ki. In the pastime of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with King Prataparudra, one very important theme comes through. And I want to stay focused on that theme because Chaitanya Charitamrita, like Srimad Bhagavatam, is very practical. There are many things that we can learn just by seeing and hearing how the devotees behaved. How did they conduct themselves? And actually, that is what we want as devotees. We all would have read something from Bhagavatam. We would have read from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Bhagavad Gita. But the real test is, in order for us to complete the studying, there must be realization. And for us to be able to realize something that we have studied, the gap is actually whether we put what we have studied into practice. That is very important. If you can put whatever that you can study into practice, then you will realize what you're studying. But if you don't put into practice what you study, then realization escapes us, actually. So just by sitting down and thinking of something, we may not be able to realize it. The word realize comes from the word real. In other words, it has to become real. After reading, it has to become real. Otherwise, there's no realization to it. So sometimes the gap between knowledge and realization is actually in practice. That is the middle part of it. So there's actually knowledge, practice of the knowledge, and then finally you get realization. And that is why in all of Chaitanya Charitamrita, you see that the devotees of the Lord, whatever they heard from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they put into practice. Whatever they heard from the devotees, they also put into practice. And therefore, these personalities became very exalted because whatever they practiced, they realized. And what is the benefit of realization? Whatever you realize, you can then share with others. People can hear someone with knowledge, but they are touched by someone with realization. There is a difference. And that's why when you hear someone whom you know has realized what they have spoken, then you become inspired to do something about Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, it's very difficult. We may hear so many lectures, but it may take a long time for it to filter through the barren soil of our heart, you see. So that's an important point. So all this comes down to one thing, which is central to our discussion today. It comes down to the point of attitude. This is very important, attitude. What is attitude actually? Attitude is actually a very settled way of thinking and feeling. That is how we develop an attitude. And whenever we have an attitude, where will you find this attitude in a person? Typically, if you think carefully, it will be reflected in our behavior. Our behavior very often shows our attitude. If some of you are teachers, right, when you see your students in front of you in class, by their behavior, you come to know their attitude, isn't it? Sometimes you say, no, I don't like the way the student is studying because he may be doing very well in the studies, but his attitude is not good. There's a difference. There's a difference. Srila Prabhupada in the Nectar of Instruction, in the preface, right, he said something very important. He said, advancement in Krishna consciousness depends on the attitude of the follower. It's a very important line in the preface of Nectar of Instruction. Advancement in consciousness, Krishna consciousness, it depends on the attitude of the follower. In other words, there is a deep connection between attitude and behavior, because whatever we think and whatever we feel will eventually determine what we are. And it comes from our attitude. When you have time, you can actually go into Vedabase and do a search on the two words, devotional attitude. And you see how many times Srila Prabhupada uses the word devotional attitude. He doesn't only use the word someone's devotion, but many times he uses the word devotional attitude. So if our attitude, if you go by Bhagavad Gita, if our attitude is divine, in other words, if our attitude is suited towards moving towards Krishna, then all the qualities that we will reflect from our attitude will be the divine qualities that Krishna and Arjuna discussed in chapter 16, I think, of Bhagavad Gita. Humility, gratitude, simplicity, eagerness, steadfast determination, service on the platform of devotion. These are all qualities that are coming from the devotional attitude of a devotee. But if we don't have that devotional attitude, then Bhagavad Gita also tells us, Dambo, Darpo, Abhimanascha. That verse is there. You have arrogance, you have conceit, you have criticism, exploitation, duplicity, and even parusham, harshness of words. So all of this reflect our attitude actually. So this is a very important point for us to remember. So let's understand all of this now in the context of this Leela from Chaitanya Charitamrita, where we come to understand how Prataparudra as a king actually exhibited his attitude and how his attitude allowed him to take the perfection of life from the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Now, who is Prataparudra? That's very important. He was what we'll call a great king. The history will tell you that he was actually a very respected and powerful king of Orissa. And he was a patron of spiritual devotion. Chaitanya Charitamrita tells us, that although he was surrounded by so much of material opulence, Prataparudra was not attached, nor was he affected by them. In fact, very often he considered himself to be a caretaker because he believed that all this kingdom is not mine. I'm just caretaking it on behalf of the Supreme Lord. So he was very loved. He was very revered by his citizens. But what made him most special was his devotional attitude. The king was a great devotee of the Lord, and he was a servant of Lord Jagannath, the Lord of the universe. This attitude in this Leela would be severely tested by the Lord himself. Now, of course, the next point we must understand is there are only two major protagonists in this Leela. One is, of course, Prataparudra, and then there's Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And we all know this is the auspicious week leading up to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance. And we all know from the pages of Chaitanya Charitamrita and the pages of Bhagavatam also, and all our revealed scriptures, that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is non-different from Krishna. It's very important. What is that nice verse? Radha Krishna Pranaya Vrikriti Ladini Shakti Asmad Ekadmana Api Bhuvi Pura Deha Bedam Gatau Tau Chaitanyakyam Prakatamaduna Tadvayam Chakyam Aptam Radha Bhava Juyati Suvalitam Naumi Krishna Swarupam. This is one of the seminal verses that appears in the Adi Leela of Chaitanya Charitamrita. I think it's in the first chapter itself. And there, very nicely, Krishnadas Kaviraj Maharaj makes it very clear to all of us that although Radha and Krishna are one in their identity, they always are separated eternally. But now, these two transcendental identities have again united, and they have united in the form of Sri Krishna Chaitanya. So Krishnadas Kaviraj Maharaj says, I bow down to him because he has manifested himself within this world, right? With the sentiment and complexion of Srimati Radharani, although he is Krishna himself. So if we ever want to explain to anyone about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, this shloka, right, is complete. It tells us both the confidential as well as the external reason why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is so special to us. He's not different from Krishna. In Leelamrita, Prabhupada was going to initiate two boys. And just before he was going to initiate them, he asked them only one question. He said that, who is Krishna? And they said he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Prabhupada said, very good. Then he said, so who is Lord Chaitanya? And one of the boys says, he's an incarnation of Krishna. And Prabhupada said, no, he is Krishna. There's a difference. He's not an incarnation of Krishna. He is Krishna. So this is very important. And Krishnadas Kaviraj Maharaj makes it a point in the same way to tell us Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is non-different from Krishna, but he has come to taste the mellow of Krishna Bhakti. So he is the one who opened the treasure trove of love of Godhead in this world. And that is why, he is so treasured. And that is why Prataparudra wanted one very important aim in life. He just wanted to take darshan of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That's all he wanted. Up till then, he had heard about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but he never had a chance to try and take darshan of Mahaprabhu. Of course, we can always ask this question. As a king, why can't he just summon all of them over to his kingdom? It's very easy to do that. But Chaitanya Charitamrita tells us that he could have done it, but it would have been foolish because that attitude would not have been devotional. It would not have been humble. And one cannot see Krishna when one is not humble and devotional. Duryodhana many times summoned Krishna to his palace, but he was not taking darshan of Krishna. He was only seeing Krishna. Because his attitude was not devotional, it was as good as not seeing Krishna. This is the point we have to understand. Our deities are at home. We see them every day as we walk past them. But seeing is different from taking darshan. If we take darshan of them, then we are actually gaining. But if we just see them and walk away because it's a formality, then it is just as good as Duryodhana and the whole gang of Kauravas, all the time they were seeing Krishna. But they had no devotional attitude to Krishna. So this is why Prataparudra was thinking to his heart, Who am I to summon Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? He is the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. If he allows me to get darshan from him, that will be my great fortune, and that will be my purification. But now hear the king's attitude. The king thought to himself, but unfortunately, I'm not very qualified. This is the starting point of devotional service. When we genuinely believe that we are not qualified. Not that we falsely say, oh, Prabhu, I'm very low, I'm very bad. But in our hearts, we think we are better than others. That is not devotional attitude. Prataparudra really felt, I am not qualified. So he thought, how do I take darshan of Mahaprabhu? How? Being not qualified to take darshan of Krishna doesn't mean you are not determined to take darshan of Krishna, right? Determination is a very important quality in Krishna consciousness. Just because we are not qualified doesn't mean hands up and we are finished. We walk away from Krishna consciousness. No. Someone once told me, Prabhu, I'm leaving Krishna consciousness because I feel I'm too lowly to take up Krishna consciousness. That's a crazy argument for the mind, isn't it? At that rate, we'll all leave ISKCON because nobody is qualified. So the point is, even though he felt disqualified, he was determined. This is a nice attitude. So then he thought, the only way to take darshan of Mahaprabhu is I will ask permission to see him from the great devotees of him. What a nice point. I will take permission to see him from the great devotees of Mahaprabhu. That is how I will do. You know, in the 9th canto, 4th chapter, there's a very nice line that Krishna tells Durvasa Muni. Aham bhakta paradino hi asvatantra ivadvija sadhubi grasta hridayo bhakte bhakta jana priyaha. He says there that, my dear Durvasa, I am not at all independent. You think I'm independent, but I'm not independent. Krishna himself saying that. He says, I'm completely dependent on my pure devotees. And then he says a nice line, Bhaktai Bhakta Jana Priyaha. He says, what to speak of my devotees? Even the devotees of my devotees are very dear to me. So Prataparudra was thinking, if I'm not qualified to approach Krishna directly, let me approach his devotees and serve them and ask them for permission. This is the correct mood. This is known in our tradition today as parampara, right? We speak so much of parampara, but parampara is not just initiation. Parampara is also association. That is the part of parampara we miss. That if we want to come to Krishna, we go through the devotees because the devotees are dear to Krishna. That is our parampara actually. So now Prataparudra decided, let me now approach the great scholar and devotee Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. So he's the first person he approached. And Bhattacharya was very easy to speak to, with the king. And the king revealed his heart to Bhattacharya and told him, Bhattacharya, this is how I'm feeling actually. I'm really out of it, What do I do? And Bhattacharya then said, don't worry. You write a letter and I will bring it to the Lord. So Prataparudra wrote a very nice, heartfelt letter. And Bhattacharya, upon reading that letter, he shared it with the devotees. He shared it with Srivas Thakur, he shared it with Haridas Thakur, he shared it with Nityananda Prabhu, and all the devotees were amazed. What great devotional attitude this king has. And so they requested, Bhattacharya, please go and speak to Mahaprabhu on behalf of the king, Ask Mahaprabhu, give him a chance to take darshan. So Bhattacharya carefully approached Mahaprabhu. And when he saw him, he said, my dear Mahaprabhu, there is a king. His name is Prataparudra Raya. He is very anxious to meet you, but he wants your permission to do so. Now, as soon as Mahaprabhu heard his statement, Mahaprabhu's attitude was very different. He vehemently denied. He said, no, I'm not going to meet King Prataparudra. I'm a sannyasi in a renounced order of life. Do you know, Bhattacharya, for a sannyasi, it's just as dangerous to meet a king as it is to meet a woman. So Bhattacharya was surprised. Mahaprabhu is the emblem of mercy. Why is so stubborn at this moment? He doesn't want to see the king. So Bhattacharya tried again. He said, my dear Lord, I understand what you say is correct, but this king is not an ordinary king. He's an amazing devotee. He's a great devotee. He's a great servant of Lord Jagannath. Mahaprabhu refuted his argument. He said, all right, you say your king is a great devotee, but he's still considered to be a venomous snake, Bhattacharya. If you continue to speak like this, you will never see me again. So if you bring up this request, I'm going to leave. So Bhattacharya thought, my God, now he's threatening he's going to leave me also. So he was thinking, this is highly unusual. Why Mahaprabhu is so strict? So then what happened? Bhattacharya went back and he spoke to Ramananda Rai. And he told him, I tried with Mahaprabhu, but somehow the Lord was not moving. So Ramananda Prabhu was thinking, actually, this is very nice. It's Krishna's plan. I have to go to Puri. Prataparudra is also coming to Puri. And there, I'm going to ask Prataparudra this time, because I'm engaged under him, whether I can retire from service. I hope he will give me permission. So I will use that opportunity to speak to Mahaprabhu. Okay, fine. So Ramananda Rai got himself ready. At that time, the king, as with all his retinue, he also arrived in Jagannath Puri. He came with his ministers and everyone, and they visited the great temple of Jagannath. Now, one of his great ministers is Ramananda Rai, and he took the opportunity to immediately go and see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Now, when Lord Chaitanya saw Ramananda Rai, Lord Chaitanya was so happy. He embraced him, and he asked him, Ramananda Rai, have you decided to retire from service and dedicate your life to devotional service? Ramananda Rai Prabhu said, yes, my Lord, I have, but I would not have been able to retire if not for King Prataparudra. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu thought, again, this king is coming into the picture. So then Mahaprabhu said, oh, that's very nice. He's a very nice devotee for helping you to become a devotee. Ramananda Rai went on to say, he said, do you know that when I approached the king for the decision to retire and serve Lord Chaitanya, the moment the king heard that I was going to serve you, my Lord, he graciously agreed. He was so pleased, he actually relieved me of all my material duties. And he said that I can actually take pension for life without any reduction. I don't know how it is over there in New Zealand, but if I got such a deal, I'll be very happy. Okay. And this was actually the deal given by the king to Ramananda Rai. He was so happy. So Prataparudra was so ecstatic because Ramananda Rai could serve the Lord. Prataparudra was not envious of Ramananda Rai. This is a very important point, Prabhu said, Matajis. Sometimes when we see a devotee being given an opportunity to do a wonderful service, if we are not careful, envy can come into our hearts. And how does envy come? It comes because we are proud. We may subtly think that we are greater a devotee than the other devotee. So how come we are not getting the service? And that thinking leads to envy. Prataparudra could easily have become envious of Ramananda Rai. You are under my employ, you're under my bankroll. If Mahaprabhu wants you to join him, then you should tell Mahaprabhu he has to come and see me, then you can join. That would be the normal materialistic way of thinking, isn't it? But Prataparudra was so non-envious by nature that he thought to himself, if I am unfortunate and I cannot serve the Lord, at least you, Ramananda Rai, you can serve the Lord, right? Why should I be an impediment between both of you? I am most fallen. I am very, very much abominable. I am unfit to receive an interview with the Lord. One's life is successful only when one engages in his service. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Ramananda Rai, I release you from my service. Your service to Mahaprabhu is infinitely more important, much more important. And Ramananda Rai then concluded all that he said to Mahaprabhu by saying one important line. He said, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, I don't think there's even a fraction of Prataparudra's loving ecstasy in my heart. And he kept quiet. He was praying that now Mahaprabhu's heart will melt. Mahaprabhu heard this. And Chaitanya Charitamrita says he was actually very pleased. And he said this now, my dear Ramananda Rai, you are a foremost devotee of the Lord. Whoever loves you is certainly very fortunate as a person. Because the king has shown so much love for you, Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, will accept him. And then he changed the subject completely. He never said anything in the earlier request that, can you please see him? No, he just skipped it. Sometimes how we want to avoid something, right? Somebody says A, we say B, isn't it? And that's exactly what Mahaprabhu did, actually. So you can see, even Krishna does that in the spiritual world. That's why we are learning from him. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu changed. He changed it. And he never mentioned that I will bless him. He mentioned that Krishna will bless him. To many of his associates, who were very close, he would say something sometimes. But here he said, no, Krishna will bless him. And then he changed the subject. So Ramandarai stayed for a day. Mahaprabhu never spoke about the king. And later, the king returned to Puri. And there he met Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya again. And he said, did you ask him last time? Did Ramandarai ask him? Was there any petition? Did the Lord say anything? Bhattacharya said, I did, with much endeavor. I tried. But then the Lord threatened to leave Puri if I even spoke your name again. How would you feel if you were Prataparudra? At this moment, would our determination be strong? Or would we say, forget Krishna consciousness, now I'm going? But the king didn't do that. Chaitanya Charitamrita says, the king became very unhappy and he started lamenting. And this is what he said. The Supreme Lord has appeared in this world to deliver all fallen souls, with the exception of me. He has come to deliver everyone. If the Lord is determined not to see him, not to see me, then I am determined to give up my life if I do not see him. What is the point of my life if I cannot see the Lord? If I do not receive the Lord's mercy, this body, my kingdom, it's all useless. I would rather just be a mendicant, because what is the point of all this? When Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya heard the lamentation of this king, he was astonished by his determination, not his lamentation, but his determination. Sometimes our determination can come out in lamenting, but it cannot be mistaken as a weakness. It is a positive attitude, actually. When the materialist laments, it's very often for the loss of a material object. But when a devotee laments, it is actually for an eagerness to serve the Lord. So it's a little bit different, actually. So Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya now said this very important point. Just give me a minute to drink. My throat is a bit dry. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya then told the king, don't worry. Because of your firm determination, I am sure the Lord's mercy will definitely be bestowed upon you. It's only a question of time. This is very important for all of us, Prabhus and Matajis. When we take up devotional service, we should not be very impatient. Patience is one of the great virtues of a devotee. Why does a devotee remain patient? Because he knows that Krishna is time. Krishna is time. So therefore, if we are determined to serve Krishna and Krishna is time, it is only a question of time before Krishna will reciprocate with us. He is time. Why won't Krishna give us time if we are using time in his service? He is time after all. That's why when we say, Prabhu, no time, it's actually a contradiction. If we have faith that Krishna is time, how can we say there is no time? This is how Prataparudra was assured by another great devotee, Bhattacharya. See how kind devotees are to each other. This is something to take back for us. You're all in a congregation, and it's obvious that you're all together because there's love, there's care, there's trust amongst each of you. When someone is down, somebody is there. When somebody is up, somebody is down. They help each other, because on the platform of time, we all have our struggles. And so Bhattacharya said, your love for him is very deep. Your love for him is very pure. Without any doubt, he will be merciful to you. When we hear encouragement from devotees, how important it is to us, isn't it? Chaitanya Charitamrita is full of encouragement of devotees. Even though here the Lord was a bit fierce, the devotees, they were very kind. Bhattacharya then suggested a plan. We realize here that Bhattacharya is actually a great strategist also. He says the day will come when the Lord will go for Jagannath Festival. There he will dance. He will be very ecstatic. And there you can go and see him. That will be a good time to see him. So the king thought, all right, but it's a long time. I'm determined to see him still. Let me try. So Bhattacharya went back to the devotees And he told them what the king was determined about. And now Nityananda Prabhu himself, non-different from Krishna, said, I will take up the petition on behalf of Bhattacharya. On behalf of Prataparudra. I will do it now. So Nityananda Prabhu went to see Mahaprabhu. And he said, have you heard that Prataparudra is going to become a mendicant and give up his kingdom if he cannot see you? Do you know that's what he's ready to do that? And when Mahaprabhu heard Nityananda Prabhu's statement about the king, Prabhupada writes in the purport, the Lord's mind softened a little bit. Very important, huh? This is the first point where it softened a little bit. Why? Because Prataparudra attracted the mercy of Nityananda Prabhu. And who is Nityananda Prabhu? The original Adi Guru. Until we attract the mercy of the spiritual master, to soften the heart of the Lord is an impossibility. Because it is the pure devotee who can actually help us in the spiritual world. That's why this is very significant, you see. But Prabhupada writes there, even though the Lord's heart was softened and mind was softened, externally he spoke very harsh words. So let's hear what Mahaprabhu has to say. He said, if you were to speak to me about this, I'm going to leave all of you. No more mention of Prataparudra. But Nityananda Prabhu, is transcendently stubborn, right? After all, he broke the danda of Mahaprabhu. So what can we say? And nobody will take that except, from Nityananda Prabhu. So Nityananda Prabhu then finally persuaded, all right, you don't want to see the king, do one thing. I have found a solution that will enable the king to continue to be a king, and at the same time, you to continue not wanting to see the king. Mahaprabhu said, what is this great solution you're giving now? Tell me. And he said, why don't you give the king one of your outer garments? Just give it through me and I'll give it to him. At least coming from you, it is not different from you. And he will have hope that he can see you in the future. That's the other important thing in devotional service. We must never feel hopeless. There's always hope in devotional service. At whatever point of time you start in your life, old, young, sick, healthy, there's always hope in devotional service. And Nityananda Prabhu proved that actually. So he took the outer garment. Mahaprabhu reluctantly took his outer garment. He was not very happy, but it's Nityananda Prabhu, isn't it? So he reluctantly agreed. He took it and said, take it now. And he walked away. Nityananda Prabhu then took it and together with the devotees, gave it to the king, the outer garment of the Lord. The moment Prataparudra took that outer garment, he became ecstatic. He took it back to his kingdom, put it on his altar and worshipped it as he would worship Mahaprabhu personally. Because in his heart, there was no different. But Prataparudra was determined. He went to Ramandarai again and he said, please petition on my behalf to see the Lord. Ramandarai went to see the Lord again. And he said, my Lord, please give him darshan. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very upset. He vehemently denied again. He said the king possesses very good qualities, but by simply having the word king in front of Prataparudra, he has infected everything. He has infected everything. But if you are still very eager for the king to meet up with me, then I would suggest one thing, Ramandarai. You bring his son to me now. So first it was outer garment from Lord to him. And now he agreed, you bring his son to me. Because the son is a representative of the father. So Mahaprabhu was telling Ramandarai, well, the son is not different from the father. So if I see the son, then the father should become satisfied. Now Ramandarai thought, better I take this and before Mahaprabhu changes his mind, right? A bad bargain is better than no bargain, isn't it? Prabhupada said, the blind uncle is better than no uncle. So Ramandarai was very smart. He took it. And after he took it, he took the proposal, he went to see Prataparudra. When he saw the king and the king heard that his son could go, the king became so blissful. He became so blissful, so happy. He said, yes, I will arrange for him to be sent. Now at that time, by Ramandarai's expert maneuvers, Mahaprabhu and the entire entourage agreed to stay in the gardens of the king's palace. So from the king's palace balcony, Prataparudra could actually see Mahaprabhu from far. Okay, it wasn't darshan the way he wanted, but he could see now. And so he sent his son, and as his son went to see Mahaprabhu, when Mahaprabhu saw this little boy, the boy reminded Mahaprabhu of little boy Krishna in Golok Vrindavan, because the boy appeared to Mahaprabhu, as if he was just like the son. So at that point of time, Mahaprabhu came to the boy and he embraced him very tightly in transcendental ecstasy. Can you imagine? I think all of us wish we were sons of Prataparudra right now, isn't it? And at that point of time, when Mahaprabhu embraced the son went into ecstasy. And quickly Ramandarai sent him back, like a charged battery, your battery is charged, quickly send it back. So he quickly sent the son back. And when Prataparudra saw his son charged with devotional ecstasy of Mahaprabhu, what did he do? He embraced his son. He was very loving. He was always embracing his son. But today there was double incentive because Mahaprabhu had embraced his son. And when Prataparudra embraced his son, he also felt the same devotional ecstasy. He felt that wonderful, wonderful ecstasy. So he became very, very happy. Very, very happy. But he was determined. This is very important. He didn't give up yet. And now what happened? The great festival of Jagannath Puri had come. The Chariot Festival that everyone looked after. And that is what Mahaprabhu was actually there for. While Lord Jagannath was being transported, the day came, Jagannath was being transported from his royal throne to the chariot. There's a nice ceremony that goes on, isn't it, when the Lord is coming out. At that point of time, tumultuous chanting, singing, dancing, it all erupted from Mahaprabhu and all the devotees who were outside. And they were going on with an uproaring kirtan. While all this was happening, the king came with his entourage. But now the king was like a commoner. He just, with all humility, came down from his throne. And to the amazement of everyone, he actually sprinkled water on the road in front of the chariot of the Lord. And that water was sandalwood scented water. He put some flowers at the bottom. He picked up a broom, a very simple broom, and he started sweeping the ground before the Lord. Before the Lord would come, he thought that there is some dust. It is my duty now to sweep it off. This is the first instance of this wonderful pastime of how we sweep, before Jagannath comes. You all have seen it in Rath Yatras. Today, it's differently done. Today, actually, we put a turban on someone, but at that time, Prataparudra took out his crown. Prataparudra took a very simple broom. Of course, today our broom looks much better, but his broom was very simple. And today we always say that the person who is our special guest should be the one to actually clean. But there, the king was the king of the whole land. But he came down from the throne not like a guest, not like the king, but like an absolute commoner. That was his attitude. And his sweeping was not ceremonial, Prabhus and Matajis. It was not ceremonial. He was sweeping because he did not want dust to touch the lotus feet of Jagannath as he was coming through. He did not want that. Now, this is a very important pivotal time in the pastime, because upon seeing the king engaged in such menial service, Prabhupada uses the word menial service, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu became very happy. Prabhupada writes in that purport at that point that it is the menial service of Prataparudra that actually started Mahaprabhu's change of heart. Nityananda Prabhu put the seeds. The seeds were sown even before that by Bhattacharya, Ramananda Rai, by the mercy of the devotees. Nityananda Prabhu cemented it. But the thing that changed the heart of Mahaprabhu was seeing the king performing menial service. And Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport how important it is for us to always perform some menial service for Krishna. We must have Bhagavatam in one hand, but we should have a broom in the other hand. That's very important. They go hand in hand. Doesn't mean the moment I hold Bhagavatam, I can never get down on my knees to clean anything. because I've arrived, I've become promoted. So don't ask me to do any menial service. No, menial service is what attracts Krishna. So this point is very important. Simply, Prabhupada, I'm quoting Prabhupada here, simply by rendering this service, the king received the mercy of the Lord. It's very important. Simply by rendering this service, the king received the mercy of the Lord. So the mercy of the Lord started flowing at that point. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not externally show his pleasure, transcendently stubborn. But he continued dancing and he continued chanting the holy names. You know why this point is very important? Sometimes as devotees, we are looking for signs of the Lord's mercy, isn't it? We're in a difficult position. Lord, give me mercy, show me a sign. But we can see from this pastime that even though the Lord was very pleased with his devotee, sometimes externally it is his mercy not to show it also. Because sometimes if we are seeing the Lord's mercy externally, if we are not prepared to receive it, we may become proud. We may become puffed up. We may not receive it in the right way. Only Krishna knows at when this mercy should be revealed to us. And we must have faith until that day that the mercy is flowing, but we are like barren land. We are not ready to receive it. Mercy flows like rain across barren soil and fertile soil. The rain is the same, but the soil is fertile, so the plants grow. But if the soil is barren, is it the fault of the rain or is it the fault of the soil? It is the fault of the soil. So we cannot blame the mercy of the Lord. Mahaprabhu's mercy was flowing, but he wanted to test the king further. Now, the king, after he swept, he did not do it to show Mahaprabhu he's a very great king. No, he didn't do the service to gain recognition. And this is very important as an attitude for us as devotees. When we go and serve Radha Giridhari, when we go to the temple to serve, what is our attitude? Is it because we want name, fame? Is it because we want recognition? Do we want a pat on the back? Do we want others to see us that we're actually doing the services? This we must be very clear when we perform the service. Because this is the difference between unmotivated devotional service and motivated devotional service. When we are motivated with fruitive activities and fruitive intentions, we mix our devotional service. And when that happens, right, we cannot have the taste of devotional service. It will elude us. 20 years we may be doing something, but because it is motivated, therefore, ahaituki apratihata, that service which is unmotivated will be uninterrupted. But that service which is motivated, you will always find there will be interruptions to your service. Either it is your mind that interrupts you, people who interrupt you, circumstances that interrupt you, but actually it is our motive that is interrupting our service. So we must examine ourselves on this point. Prataparudra's simple act of sweeping was unmotivated. He didn't do it because he wanted to impress Mahaprabhu. No, he did it because Jagannath is coming. It must be clean. That's it. So after cleaning, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued his wonderful kirtans. And as he continued his kirtan, Prataparudra watched with great pleasure the Lord's exchange with his devotees, even though he was not able to participate. Now, this is the part that becomes really nice. If you read this chapter on the Rath Yatra, right, you realize that when the kirtan started, Mahaprabhu divided the whole kirtan group into 7 large groups. I think there were some kirtan leaders. I can't remember all of them. Swarup Damodar was one of them. Advaita Acharya, one of them. Srivas Thakur was one of them. Mukunda was one of them. Govinda Ghosh. I forget the last 2. But there were 7 kirtan leaders, 7 groups. And out of the 7 kirtan leaders, 7 groups, each group, right, had about 4 to 10 mridangas, I think. And there were many, many, many kartals. And each group was continuing literally on its own because the Rath Yatra procession was so big. Today, we tried to do that. The groups would overlap because we're so small. But there, it was so big that all the groups were literally serving each part of the procession. Now, as the kirtan started going on and on and on, something mystical happened. The Lord exhibited his mystical power. he performed his pastimes simultaneously in all 7 groups. In all 7 groups, each of the group thought Mahaprabhu was only in their group. He was only in their group. Sometimes we feel happy when we think, oh, Maharaj has come only to my house, but actually he's gone to 10 other houses. And that is what Mahaprabhu was doing, except that he was doing it simultaneously. So every member thought, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is present in my group only. Indeed, he did not go anywhere else. He is bestowing his mercy on me. Each person thought that way. Only 2 persons, Chaitanya Charitamrita tells us, could see that the Lord was in all 7 groups. Only 2 people had that darshan. One was Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and the other was King Prataparudra. Can you imagine that? The king, Mahaprabhu, may not have externally given him his mercy, but by giving him the transcendental potency to see the Lord manifested in 7 different places simultaneously, the Lord was actually giving him reciprocation. That is reciprocation. Why? Because Chaitanya Charitamrita tells us this was the Lord's reciprocation with the king for his humility of sweeping the street. Very important point. Because humility is a great sign of devotional attitude, isn't it? So now something else happened that was transcendently humorous. During the chanting and dancing, one of the great devotees, Srivas Thakur, he was standing in front of the king, and he became very ecstatic when he saw Mahaprabhu dancing. So what happened is when you're ecstatic, you keep jumping up and down, isn't it? So because Srivas Thakur was jumping up and down, another great devotee, Harichandana Thakur, he was standing behind Srivas Thakur. But because Srivas Thakur was jumping up and down, he could not see Mahaprabhu. I'm sure it's happened to a lot of us. We want to take darshan during a big festival. Someone's jumping and dancing and we can't see. We go this way, that way, we can't. So Harichandana started doing that, but he couldn't. Then he kept touching Srivas. Can you move? Can you move? Can you move? Srivas Thakur was thinking, why is this person touching me all the time? I want to concentrate on Mahaprabhu. So what did he do? He turned around and he gave him a slap. I hope it doesn't happen during your Rath Yatras at least, but it happened then. So it shows that these things can happen during Rath Yatras. So Harichandana, got shocked. Srivas Thakur just slapped me and he's the one blocking me from seeing Mahaprabhu. So Harichandana was about to counteract when Prataparudra said, my dear Harichandana, why are you feeling this way? You are very fortunate, for you have been graced by the hand of Srivas Thakur on you. Feel fortunate. You should feel obliged to him. Harichandana thought, actually the king has a point. After all, devotee is slapping me. I can take it, isn't it? That's fine. That's all right. Of course, that doesn't mean you all go around slapping each other, but that's the point. See, the attitude of Prataparudra was so mature that even in a difficult situation, he could make other devotees see the hand of Krishna. In this case, literally the hand of Krishna. He could see it. He could see it. So after all that, at the height of ecstasy, they all started concentrating on the wonderful dance. At the very height of ecstasy, Mahaprabhu fainted in front of the Rath. He fainted. He fell down before the chariot. And he fell down just in front of the king. Not in front of anyone else. The king simultaneously and spontaneously picked up the Lord with great respect. He did. He picked him up with great respect. The Lord regained consciousness. The moment he opened his eyes, the first person he saw was the king. And what did he say? The Lord condemned himself very loudly. Oh, how pitiful it is that I have touched a person who is interested in mundane affairs. Still very, very difficult. Mahaprabhu is still not yielding. Imagine in front of so many people to say such words to the king. But how did Prataparudra, what was his attitude in receiving this from the Lord? Chaitanya Charitamrita says, he didn't become insulted. He didn't become frightened, but he actually became very humbled. And in fact, the fright that he exhibited was that I have offended Mahaprabhu. He didn't become insulted at all. Bhattacharya pacified him and said, don't worry, this is also mercy from Mahaprabhu. So after the great festival was over, the Lord and his devotees, they decided, let's go to a garden nearby to rest. And so they entered there. After having nice prasadam, Mahaprabhu went off on his own near a bench and he started resting. He lay on the ground and his eyes closed in ecstatic love and devotion. When Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya saw that the Lord was sleeping, he thought this is an opportunity. Any source of opportunity is Krishna, right? In the 6th canto, Vritasur says that Krishna is Samanjasa. He is the Lord of opportunities. And devotees always see opportunities to serve Krishna. So Bhattacharya immediately saw it and went to the king and said, King, come. Now you dress, take off your royal clothes and dress as a very humble person. Okay, just wear normal dhoti kurta or something very, very, very simple. And now you approach Mahaprabhu. He's sleeping. Take his lotus feet, start massaging and start chanting wonderful shlokas from Bhagavatam. Please do that. Please do that. That was Bhattacharya's very simple point to him. So the king became very excited. He was so humble and he thought, now is my chance. Now, if I was the king, I'd quickly rush. But the king didn't do that. Very important. He didn't do that. He was so humble that with folded hands, he first took permission and blessings from all the devotees that were assembled a little distant away. From Bhattacharya, he went to Nityananda, Srivas Thakur, Swarup Damodar, Govinda. He went to all of them. He took their blessings first. Bhakta Bhakta Jana Priyaha. Because he took their blessings, then with great faith and courage, Prabhupada uses these two words, with great faith and courage, he then fell down and touched the lotus feet of the Lord. And when he started, then he started chanting these shlokas. And what were these shlokas that he chanted? These were the great shlokas from Gopi Geet in the 10th canto of Bhagavatam. Some of the most beautiful shlokas are there. So the king began singing, Jaiti te dikam janmana vraja shrayata indira shashwat atrahi daita drishyatam dikshutavakas tvaidrita shavas tvam vichinvate atiti adbhavan ahnikananam trute yugayate tvam machandatam kutila kuntalam shrimukam chate jada udikshitam pakshmakrit prisham tavakatamritam tapta jivanam kavibiriditam kalmashapaham shravana mangalam shrimadatam bhuvi granantiye bhurida janaha. When the king came to this particular shloka, this is from 10:31:9. 10:31:9. When he came to this shloka, then the Lord suddenly started speaking. The Lord said, who is this person? Go on reciting. This is so nice. Please continue. And Prataparudra continued chanting. And when he continued chanting, Mahaprabhu then stopped him. He said, you have given me invaluable gems. What a nice point. You have given me invaluable gems. And now Mahaprabhu said, but I have nothing to give you in return. Therefore, I can only give you one thing. I will simply embrace you. And that's exactly the gem that Prataparudra was determined and praying for all this journey, isn't it? Not anything else, just a simple embrace. And the king replied, you are most munificent, you're most generous, you're most merciful, my Lord. And so Mahaprabhu then gave the goal of life to Prataparudra. And this is how the pastime ends. What do we take from this pastime? Let's take a few minutes to take, what can we take from this pastime? That's very important. Prabhupada says that the king's previous service was what attracted Lord Chaitanya's mercy. Therefore, in this case, when the Lord embraced him, Mahaprabhu did not even ask him who he was. He didn't ask him. The king was scared, that he would be asked. Then Mahaprabhu would say, you must go. But this time, Mahaprabhu did not even ask him, but he immediately bestowed his mercy upon him. This is very important. Why? Because Mahaprabhu knows exactly when to distribute mercy. And because the Lord knows each one of every one of us. He really knows who we are. We think we know who we are. When we introduce ourselves to the Lord, Lord, I'm so and so. But the Lord knows who we really are actually. We don't know who we are. That's why Prataparudra shed off the kingly garment. Because that was not him, you see. Who he was actually in his chanting of the shlokas, in his menial service, in his humble attitude of devotional service. That was what defined the king. And finally, at the end of everything, after the Lord had embraced him and never asked him anything, then finally the Lord asked him, who are you? You have done so much for me. All of a sudden you have come here and you made me drink the nectar of the pastime of Krishna. What did the king reply at that point after being touched by Mahaprabhu? He said, my Lord, I am the most obedient servant of your servants. That is all I am. It is just my desire that you accept me as servant of your servant. The Lord then awarded King Prataparudra the pinnacle of happiness and success in this world. And what did he give him? Pure devotional service to the Lord. So we can end by asking ourselves this very important question. What is the goal of our life? Is the goal of our life to take up devotional service? That's good. But how do we want to take up devotional service? What is the goal of devotional service? Savai pumsam paro dharmo yathor bhakti radok saje. Ahaituki apratihata yayatma suprasidati. Bhagavatam tells us we can only completely satisfy ourselves when our bhakti is unmotivated and therefore it becomes uninterrupted. Till then, we will never be really satisfied in whatever we are doing. That is why our attitude is very important. Prataparudra was very clear in his goal of existence. That was the first thing you see in him. He was firm from the start to somehow or other take audience from the Lord. This was seen in his impassioned plea to Bhattacharya, then his impassioned plea to Nityananda, his impassioned plea to Ramananda Rai, his impassioned plea always to all the devotees, and his willingness to give up royalty, kingdom, and opulence. So his clarity of his intense desire allowed him to finally get the mercy of Krishna. That is why Prabhupada says in one of the purports of Bhagavad Gita, disturbance of the mind is due to want of a firm and clear goal. Very important point. I think it is either in the purport of 264 or 266. Suhat Prabhu, later you can check and you can share with the congregation. It's either 264 or 266 in the purport. Prabhupada writes, disturbance of the mind is actually because there is lack of clarity. When we come as devotees, we may take it for granted that we know what is the clarity of our goal, but we are not. We must be clear. It must be so clear, it's like butter slicing, knife slicing through butter. Every day we should be clear, just like every day Prataparudra was very clear. And though he was fully qualified, another important aspect of Prataparudra was he genuinely believed in the principle of serving devotees of the Lord and getting blessings through them. Through sadhu sangha only he believed he could get the mercy of Krishna. Therefore, the crown that Prataparudra was wearing was not the royal crown of materialistic desires. It was actually the crown of humility. And it was exhibited in the lack of his pride, lack of his envy, and lack of his anger. And I want to end by showing you how, because of his humble and devotional attitude, he became free of all this. Look at pride. Prataparudra, throughout this pastime, genuinely felt unqualified. There was no pride. He was prepared to lose all material items because he was not thinking that I am proud, these things belong to me. Envy. Instead of being envious of the devotees, how many times Prataparudra was snubbed by Mahaprabhu? But he was genuinely happy for Ramananda Rai's great fortune when he retired. He was genuinely happy for his son to be embraced and he not to be embraced. He was genuinely happy when devotees were dancing and he was an outsider. That is why it is stated, even if you can't perform devotional service, at least take pleasure in seeing others perform devotional service. Where is that? 1.836 of Srimad Bhagavatam. Kunti Mata says, Shrunavanti Gayanti, Grananti Abhikshnashaha, Smaranti Nandanti, Tavehitam Janaha. Nandanti means you take pleasure in others doing. So even Kunti Mata says in Bhagavatam, for those devotees who hear, who chant, who repeat your transcendental activities, or who take pleasure in others doing so. Sometimes we're very happy doing, we are doing, if I'm chanting Kirtan, I'm very happy. Somebody else comes and chants, then I'm not happy. I don't want to share the stage. That is not devotional service. Therefore, Prataparudra showed us that he had no envy. And those who are like that, ta eva pashanti achire natavakam bhava pravaho paramam padambujam. Those who are like that, they will certainly see the lotus feet of Krishna. That's true, right? Here, he saw the lotus feet of Mahaprabhu. He served and touched the lotus feet of Mahaprabhu. And after touching that, Kunti Mata says, they will never have the cycle of repetition of birth and death again. See? So he was free of pride. He was free of envy. And there was no anger. Because these two are not there, there was no anger. Did he become angry when the Lord's piercing statements were heard? Did he become insulted when the Lord gave him only an external piece of cloth? Did he become agitated when the Lord became angry with him when he picked him up at the Chariot Festival? No, no, no. He was not at all like that. So if you're not proud, then you become free of envy. If you become free of envy, anger will not touch you. So the royal devotional attitude of Prataparudra was actually in his simplicity of thought and deed, and his gratitude, the quality of being thankful and appreciative, counting his blessings, thankful for devotees' association, thankful for Lord's kindness on his son, thankful for the Lord's outer garment, thankful for being able to massage the lotus feet of the Lord. If we can take even a fraction of these amazing qualities of Prataparudra, then we will also become very happy and very peaceful in our Krishna consciousness. All glories to the wonderful Leela of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Prataparudra. All glories to all the assembled Vaishnavas. Wishing you a very blissful Gaur Purnima. And sorry I took a little bit more time than I did. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Devakinandan Prabhu, thank you very much for a wonderful class. We still got a few minutes for questions or comments. The devotees, please come forward if you have something to say or any question. Thank you.
Oh, I have a question.
Yes, Prabhu.
You talked about a very interesting point in the sense that we need to have a caretaker's attitude. All the resources that are being given to us are by Krishna, and we need to take care of them. But Prabhu, we often find that when we are given resources and we in principle, we understand we should be the caretaker, but because of various conditioning and our atmosphere around us, we get attached to that resource, whether it's money, whether it's position, whether it's power. And although we know it's temporary and I'm just here for a few days or months or years, we get attached. So I just wanted, my question is, what should be the attitude, like you just mentioned, in terms of on a day-to-day basis, to consider that I'm a caretaker, not a proprietor? We know that, but how do we actually translate that into realizing that and acting upon it?
Yeah, that's a nice point, Prabhu. How do we translate this knowledge that we are caretakers and not proprietors into realization, right? It's a very important point. There are a combination of things that will help us. One is the fact that Srila Prabhupada has mercifully put this point into literally every part of Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, and Chaitanya Charitamrita. Many, many times Prabhupada brings up this point that if we are not careful, we will lord it over material nature. And that's exactly the problem with the proprietor mode and not the caretaker mode. Study of Srila Prabhupada's books intensely, humbly, And then praying to Srila Prabhupada and the devotees to act on it is the first starting point, Prabhu. That's what also was the success of Prataparudra. Because he always felt genuinely that on his own he will not be able to do this. But with the help of the devotees, he would become a devotee. So we should also pray that on our own we can't do it. But if we have the blessings of Srila Prabhupada, our spiritual masters, and with the help of the devotees, we will be able to do that. So that's the second point that's very important. The third thing that's important, I find, Prabhu, is that every morning when we start our sadhana, this point, that we are actually not part of this body, and that we are actually part and parcel of Krishna, and that all that we have is on borrowed time. This point should be hammered home at the very start of the day. And it can be hammered home on the basis of good sadhana, Prabhu, because that's how Krishna will speak to us on the platform of our sadhana. So the combination of all this, Prabhu, I find will actually help devotees to remember that we are actually caretakers. Sometimes Krishna also helps us to remember by slapping us. He puts us in positions where we become very attached to something, and then suddenly it is forcibly taken away from us. At that point, we may lament, but that is also his feature of helping us. Because after a while, a devotee who laments, because of realization and sadhana, the devotee will come to the point where he realizes, I was lamenting for that which I should not have lamented for. And then he sees Krishna's mercy, actually. So Krishna's mercy is very mysterious. Sometimes it is given palatably, but sometimes in Prataparudra's case also, it is given very harshly. But they are both mercy. And depending on how quick we are learning as devotees, he will administer the mercy according to the way he wants to. I hope that's useful, Prabhu.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Very, very nice. Thank you.
Thank you. Jai Krishna Chandra Prabhu, I'm taking darshan of you. Hari Hari. I see Sumit Prabhu also. Hare Krishna. Jai. Sita Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Pranam Prabhu.
Dandavad. So nice to hear you and see all of you. Is there a question in the chat group? Maybe let me check. Okay, that's fine. Thank you then. Nandavraja Prabhu, thank you so much for
Thank you,
organizing
welcome.
this.
So
Very
nice to see you. Your association is so wonderful. I request
Very
Krishna Prabhu to say a few words.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.